Set in long ago Italy in the early 6th century, and it is in southern Italy, right at the tip, at the boot. Well, if you think of Italy as a boot, that's where these stories take place. And it is a very lush area. And at the time of the stories, it was the breadbasket. And then the hero of these stories is named Argolicus. He was a real person, although we really don't know very much about him. He was mentioned in Cassiodorus' letters called the Varii, and I'm not going to tell you too much about him except broad strokes because every reader creates a picture in their mind of what a character looks like. But I will tell you some basic details. He's tall and fair with blonde curls. He's born and raised in Brutia in southern Italy, and he has a Roman father and an Ostrogoth mother. And of course, because of the two cultures, he has some clashes with people, say Romans, who were snobs about his mixed heritage. On the other hand, he was raised in what we would call the Roman tradition, so he has a classical education in Greek and Latin and mathematics, and he also has what was considered a true classical education, and that's in athletics and fighting. And right before this story start, he was appointed, and this is something we know from Cassiodorus' letters, he was appointed to as urban prefect in Rome, and he was considered a parvenu because, you know, he was somebody from the South. It's the same today. People from the South is like, well, you know, that's the faraway part of Italy. And it's the same thing. He wasn't from Rome. So he was considered a parvenu. And then I want to tell you a little bit about how I kind of formed his character. And you can see here on top, we have Roberto Saviano, who's actually major hero in Italy. And down below, you see my son, Zachary. And Zachary is a very logical person, and so a lot of the ways that Argolicus behave are based from my personal experience with a very cool person, my son. So in the story, and all the stories that have come before, Argolicus has an estate above the town of Scolace, and it's quite large, and there's lots of agriculture that goes on there, and he is what we would call today landed gentry. So that kind of gives you a picture of who he is. But when the grain merchant starts, he decides to go back to town and open up his family home, which has been closed for 17 years since his father died, and open up the house and set up life in town rather than live with his mother. So this is kind of generic representation of what that town home looked like. This is the front entrance, which would be on the street, and these little cubby holes that you see here was something that happened, were like shops, and the owners of these large homes rented out these shops. And so there were always people in front of the home. And also, as you went inside here, there was a doorman who kept track of the door and actually slept by the door so that the door was always guarded. And then a couple of the rooms that are mentioned frequently in the stories are first the atrium, which is the main public room. That's where people come in and people chatted and hung out. And as you can see here, the roof, this is an open area right here, and the roof is slanted. And when it rained, the rain came down and fell into this pool. And there was a deep reservoir under this pool. And then I mentioned a number of times that Argolicus has his father's old study, and that's going to be right here off of the atrium. I'm just going to kind of walk you through the house. And then where the family loved to hang out was back here underneath in the peristylum. And it was like a courtyard with flowers and plants, and it was like a garden. And because of the Mediterranean weather, it was a pleasant place to be. But as you can see, it's quite far away from the street.